Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. My name is Katrina Stanton.
I'm Steven Zuber.
And I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
Today our topic is polyamory.
A quick interjection. When this episode was first recorded, I accidentally outed someone. This episode has been edited to remove their names and certain identifying details. Again, I'm really sorry to the person affected.
This is a much requested topic from...
Is it?
I've had at least 2 people ask for more information about it, so...
Oh.
Okay, well, we did mention it in previous episodes with almost no explanation.
That's true.
So let's start with an explanation. How about a definition? The Oxford English Dictionary from 2006 defines it...
Definitions.
Me too.
What's that?
I hate dictionary definitions.
Well, we're starting with a dictionary
Okay,
definition
sorry.
because the truth is we probably all have different definitions of polyamory.
Okay.
So why don't we just settle on one? The dictionary definition is polyamory, the fact of having simultaneous close romantic relationships with 2 or more other individuals, viewed as an alternative to monogamy, especially in regard to matters of sexual fidelity. Also, the custom or practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships with the knowledge and consent of all partners concerned.
It's actually really good.
I think that's a fair
thought so.
definition.
Yeah.
I really liked the line as, quote, viewed as an alternative to monogamy. At the last Round meetup, I had a long conversation with somebody who insisted that if you drop, 3 main factors from what people consider a romantic relationship, then that just applies to every relationship. So everyone's poly. And I was like, yeah, but then, really, what's the difference? Why would you even classify yourself? And it got into this whole long thing that we were basically just quibbling over our different definitions of how it should be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
But by bringing in the fact, just looking at it, think of what you think of when you think of monogamy, but plus plus 1 or more. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
I think that's generally what we're talking about. Of course, relationships are on a multiple axis spectrum, and there are people who are aromantic and asexual, and I think that we'll get into that a little bit more a little later in this episode. But yeah, just for right now, multiple romantic relationships concurrently with the consent of everyone involved.
Yeah.
With the informed consent of everyone involved. And that's
I think that's completely justifiable.
a really important
definition.
part of it. Okay.
Yeah, this is to be distinguished from a, on the surface, monogamous relationship where one party, or I guess both, are having other romantic entanglements unbeknownst to their primary partner.
Right.
So that's not what people talk about when they use the word polyamory.
No,
Or
that's
it shouldn't
cheating.
be.
Yeah.
So the reason that we're talking about this particular topic, actually, let me back up for a moment. You should probably know where we're coming from and what our personal biases are and what kind of relationships we are involved in. I'll start. I'm in a non-hierarchical polyamorous setup.
You're going to have to define non-hierarchical if
We'll
you're going
get
to introduce
there.
it now.
And
Okay.
you're going to have to say it 3 times fast.
Non-hierarchical, non-hierarchical, non-hierarchical.
Ooh.
Damn.
Almost. It almost worked out. I think I slipped a little bit on the last one. But, so I'm in polyamorous relationships with 4 other people currently.
So where does the non-hierarchy come in?
We will talk, I think, a little bit about... So hierarchical is the idea that there is a primary partner and almost necessarily secondary partners, and sometimes even tertiary partners, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, quaternary. That sounds sad.
It really, these are pretty flexible definitions, but part of it's the idea of having a primary person who you are in a relationship with, and other relationships are satellite to that one. So...
And you are not that.
No.
Okay.
No, that's
what the non-hierarchical means.
non-hierarchical, so I'm not into that biz currently. And yeah, how about you, Stephen? How would you describe your relationship structure?
I thought it'd be more fun to do the 2 polys first.
No.
So my relationship is I'm in a monogamous relationship with an individual, but where this is going to be less of like the 2 polys versus the token monogamist, and more like, well, it'll come out more later, I think, but really we're in a position where we're satisfied with what we offer each other and where we're at with our romantic fulfillments, and neither of us are axiomatically opposed to the possibility of branching that out later. in any way.
De facto monogamous, then.
Yeah, pretty much.
I take a little bit of issue with... There's a little bit of an implication there that I don't think you meant to make.
I think I know what you're thinking.
That by being polyamorous, it means that someone is in any way not satisfied.
So this will be something really fun to dive into more, I think, because I wouldn't stand behind that implication, but I would be interested in exploring it. So let's save that until after we hear Enyash's introduction.
Right.
I want to riff off your thing real quick, because the de facto monogamous relationships are the only monogamous relationships I can respect. Like, when people are forced into monogamy, I kind of consider that... This compulsory monogamy I consider bullshit. But the de facto monogamy, there's quite a few people, I think... God, I don't remember. Maybe it was Bertrand Russell. But someone who was monogamous his entire life, but said, yeah, my wife and me are okay with that. We just have never had any desire for that. And to me, that's fine. There are people out there whose preferred relationship style is legitimately monogamy. And for them, all power to them. It takes all kinds of different types.
I think that's a good thing to bring up, because I think that there's probably some discussion out there in some of the fringe poly forums where they insist that monogamy is completely unnatural and no human is built that way, and everyone
without knowing.
Yeah,
well, I say this.
I've never met a poly person who's thought that.
I say this having skimmed a little bit this afternoon, mainly the angry rantings of Dan Savage, who I don't think would endorse that position entirely.
Oh,
but
he really
came off. Well, I heard him describe on one thing where he was describing monogamish.
Yes, I was going to talk about that.
Which is his word. Correct me if I'm wrong. For a mostly monogamous couple who occasionally do stuff with other people.
Yeah, that probably fits into the consensual non-monogamy umbrella.
For sure. But the reason I brought him up was because I think it was on Joe Rogan podcast that I was listening to him talk about it on, he equated being in a monogamous relationship your whole life to standing on your one leg for your entire life. Is it physically impossible? No. But is it really comfortable? No.
Well, I would also like to say that he was probably talking about people in general as opposed to everyone. Because, I've been reading Dan Savage since I was in college in '99, when his column was still titled, I think it was called Savage Love still, but it always, all the letters to him started with, "Hey, faggot."
Nice.
Which when I first read that, I was like, oh, what the fuck is going on here? Oh my god! And then I read it, I was like, oh, this guy is gay, and he's like totally okay with this, and I guess that's okay. He's embracing it, But no, I've been reading or listening to Dan Savage for so many years now, and he is not at all someone who... He very much embraces all the different types of sexuality out there.
Okay.
And yeah, he believes in people who are naturally monogamous too.
Okay.
I don't think he was talking about everyone in that regard.
And other perspective, I don't respect a lot of Dan Savage's positions, and I think they're terribly wrong and offensive.
Oh, wow.
So...
I guess you were right about us disagreeing on a lot of things.
We can link to his Wikipedia page, which I went to, because I'd heard of him before. Like I said, I'd heard him on that one interview, I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was looking for something that we'll bring up later. I had found an article that he'd written in response to another article that was written that quoted Dr. Helen Fisher, and he used all caps, the fucking data, and a lot of it sounded very junior high-ish the way, but I get it, he was mad. Maybe that's part of his delivery, and I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. I expected something more calm.
No, he's a showman.
And I'm comparing it to what I read on Scott Alexander's blog.
I'm hoping that we can get away from Dan Savage and back to... I'm really interested in hearing how Enyash is going to describe his relationship structure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up Dan Savage, because I was going to mention that our relationship is what Katrina would refer to as a hierarchical poly relationship, which is a term I don't like because I do not like the term hierarchical. I just, it's an ugly term. And Melissa doesn't like the term poly because she's like, I'm not poly. And so the phrase that we've often used is Dan Savage monogamish. Because we're monogamous, we're a couple, and we, do the standard normal couple things, but our relationship is open. We can sleep with other people, and so we both think that term is kind of cool. She used to use the term swingers, and swingers also applies, but it's just so fucking 70s, it's not a nice term either.
So all of the things that you guys have been describing are, again, in the realm of ethical non-monogamy, and people might quibble on what polyamory specifically means, but I think an important thing to think about for polyamory is it involves multiple intimate romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Wait, does it have to be intimate and romantic? Or can it just be
I'm not
swinging?
saying no. It really, if it's just sex, then I'm going to put my foot down and I am planting my flag, and I do not want people to take the word polyamory, which is a specific form of non-monogamy, away.
Fair enough.
Because then there's no term for it. So
the other place that we're all coming from is that Eneasz and Katrina know way more about this than I do, just because since I'm not in that community at all, other than apparently everyone I know is. So like other than being distantly connected to it through that, I've had no reason to do any research into what terms I want to tag onto myself, or what where the trenches are drawn with definitions and that sort of stuff. So that was something I was unaware of, that was a contentious point for a lot of people. That's kind of interesting. But I get it. It makes sense, because you want to distinguish, saying this is different than us just fucking strangers. This is going to be us agreeing. I like ethical non-monogamy. I think that's the great umbrella term that I think can be used.
And that does apply to
interchangeably
swinging also, because people are hopefully, aware of what's going on and have agreed to it in good faith. Now, the reason that we're talking about this also is because, to just take it back to the rationality community, is a survey that we mentioned before. It seems that there is a much higher percentage of people who self-identify as polyamorous in the less wrong community than in the community in the US, well, in the population at large. Right. So to just bring it back to that, I did participate in the survey that we're quoting, and I think it was a Scott Alexander generated survey. How
long ago did you take the survey?
I took it maybe even a couple years ago.
Then yes, that was one of the Scott Alexander ones.
That was one of the Scott Alexander ones, and that's the one that you quoted on a previous post of ours.
Yes.
But here are the stats. People who prefer being monogamous, that was 51.8%. Prefer being polyamorous, 15.1%. Uncertain or no preference, 30.9%. And other, 1.5%.
What are the other options that the 1.5 might have meant?
It didn't ask about ethical non-monogamy. It asked specifically about polyamory.
Oh, so someone who was...
So swingers who are not monogamous, or maybe don't consider themselves monogamous, or they don't like the word polyamory for any reason, might be people who either choose uncertain, no preference, or other.
Gotcha.
So not the most perfect questioning if you really want to dive into that one, but it was one of many, many different survey questions. And let's compare that to the US population at large. There are estimates that up to 5% of people in the USA are involved in some type of consensual non-monogamy.
So they're saying that it's estimates as high as 5%. Could mean that it's like 3.
Yeah, 3 to 5% actually is one that I saw in a bunch of different places. Of course, this is really hard to measure. As always, it's hard to get into what exactly people are talking about, but that number seems to be for any kind of setup in which other partners, sexual or romantic or both, are part of the situation.
So are we asking now what the link is between rationality and polyamory?
Yeah, so I thought maybe we could start by talking about what can explain, or what theories can we come up with to explain the higher percentage of self-identified polyamorous people in the less wrong community.
Well, personally, I'm of the... there's obviously founder effects and all that, but more than anything, I am of the opinion that rationalists in general tend to be a bit of a contrarian, counterculture people, and want to explore things for themselves rather than taking the standard dogma of society.
Yeah, actually, I've definitely heard that a bunch, and I think that you can potentially apply it to other communities too. For example, polyamory is higher in people of queer sexual orientation communities. And this is kind of a personal observation that other people have shared this personal observation. At least when I started in about 2008, really being polyamorous, the most other people who I met who are like that would fit into the stereotype of being really nerdy or geeky or otherwise kind of non-mainstream and happy with it.
I think it comes from a willingness to challenge what we've been taught and to re-examine things yourself. And when you look at the way compulsory monogamy is forced on people, it's really not surprising that a large amount of the people who are willing to ask those questions do come to the conclusion that this monogamy thing is kind of bullshitty, and I think I should consider my options.
There's also, I think, the I guess, compounding factor that a lot of, I'm not sure what the age demographic breakdown is specifically, but I would guess that it's largely a younger generation's game. You don't get a lot of, I'm sure you get plenty, but I would bet that less than half of the self-identified rationalists on the surveys are, like, say, over the age of 50, right?
I actually don't know what the breakdown is for people who ID as poly. I know that there's definitely some differences between the old people, the old poly people, right, and us younger, 35 and younger
no, the
people.
The rationalist community is definitely a youth community, so right, they're mostly of the young kind. But it seems, just in my experience, that normally the people who are more open in their sexuality do tend to be older.
I don't know. I actually really don't feel like I can weigh in on this one. I've been in different communities, but I've also seen a recent, what I feel like is an explosion in people embracing various kinds of non-monogamy.
Yes.
And those people, I feel like, are running younger.
Yeah, they are nowadays.
And that's what I was getting at, too, is I think that it's part of the general trend that I'm seeing a lot of people online, because I don't see that many people in real life as I do online, of people holding positions that their parents certainly didn't hold, right? Well, so we have less religious people in the younger demographics, and I think for similar reasons you might get people challenging the assumption. They look at their parents' relationship and like, man, they certainly weren't happy. Yeah. Oh, I'm hearing that a lot of people are not doing what they're doing. What's that like?
Well, it's also the policing of sexuality is a thing that happens much more to younger people than to older people. The older you get, the less people tend to give a fuck about who you're fucking. And the more people tend to get more in touch with what they want. Personally, I've found that a lot of young men have very unfulfilling sex lives. The ones that have sex lives. Because as a young man, you're told you want the thin, little blonde chick, and that's what's hot, and if you get that, then we are going to judge you highly, and that's a status symbol. And so every guy thinks they want the thin, young, hot blonde chick. And it takes a good 10 years or so for you to realize, if you're into something that is not a thin, young, hot girl, oh no, I like the rounder girls more, I enjoy having a bit of meat on my woman. And and that it takes a while to learn that, and it takes a while to not care as much about what society says you should like.
Or, even another shoe, I think that especially girls that I knew growing up, if he's not over 6 feet tall, I'm not interested. A lot of people would be even way more superficial, self-professed more superficial, not me just being like, they were superficial, but like they would want them to make a certain amount, all the stuff that like movies would list off, right?
Well, especially if you're a guy, you lots of times chase women not for the women, but for the respect of other guys.
So to bring this back to polyamory, why are we concerned in the evolving attitude as people age over who they want to be dating by body type? Like, what does that have to do with poly?
Oh, I don't think that has anything to do with poly. It's just society being fucked up.
Okay.
Oh, I think it tied in because we were talking about other ways that
I think we were talking about why it used to be that older people were more likely to be poly, and now it's been swinging more towards the young, but I was just saying it used to be more older because it would take people a while to get more comfortable with their sexuality and to throw off what society is trying to force on them.
Or be married for a long time and maybe have a spouse die, or maybe they've been married for a long time or with the partner for a long time and they're no longer interested in having sex.
Yeah.
Or there's a bunch of different reasons. I do not want to make any claims about the age demographics of polyamorous people.
But there has definitely been an explosion of the young recently. You said, "Oh wow," when I was talking, and like I want to know why, because it sounds like you were strongly disagreeing with something.
No, I was just like slut shaming. No, I'm just kidding.
I think
What?
it was your use of the word "meat on my woman."
Yeah, I believe I did not like that phrasing.
Oh
That's
really?
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean
like,
it as an insulting way at all.
No, we're not even. I don't want to get into it.
Okay, I'm
So,
sorry.
I think I knew what you meant.
I apologize for my
can't-
phrasing if that was problematic phrasing.
I think different body types
Yeah.
maybe would have been the more kosher way to put it.
I was
Okay.
just thinking of the ownership part
Oh,
of
my
that.
Oh, the my woman.
The my woman.
Oh, I meant the kind of woman I'm attracted to. Never mind. And not even me personally. Just okay. Sorry.
At least we know you're not an ownershiping type person.
That's actually one of the reasons I hate monogamy, because of the ownership aspect of it.
Oh,
If you're cool with a little bit of backpedaling, I want to make a possible counterpoint to kind of fringe communities being more comfortable with exploring non-monogamy, and make a note that racial minorities are really underrepresented as practitioners of polyamory.
Yeah.
it turns out racial minorities are underrepresented in just about everything. And there was a fun breakdown on an essay that we'll link to by Scott Alexander called
Black people are less likely.
That's the One. I think he draws 8 possible conclusions as to why this might be the case, and probably parts of most of them are part of the answer for the general underlying thing. But everything from like NASCAR enthusiasts to furries, you get respondents in the single digits in like the black community, which is why would that be the case? So it seems to be an interesting phenomena that's
Minorities are always underrepresented in any fringe movement.
yeah, and so that seems to be a larger
Racial minorities specifically.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And that seems to be a larger phenomenon than just for poly. Although the Slate Star Codex essay was written in response to an article that was written saying that the poly community is just for white people or something. So
that completely conflated it with like swingers parties, like as if minorities maybe don't have enough money to go to expensive swingers parties, and that's why they're not being involved in poly, which was just so faulty. It was terrible to read that article.
But that said, it is my impression as a non-poly person that there's not a you must be this white to join the club criteria, right?
There is not.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. Now that that's out there.
Not that I'm
We don't
aware
have a little
of.
color chart that we hold up to everyone.
Oh, you should not have gone to Bermuda. Look, you just sorry.
Oh, man.
I'm happy to have loved people of minority races and still do, so I don't think that it's a complete exclusion, but for some reason people of minority races are definitely underrepresented. Another thing that I wanted to mention as a possibility for why Less Wrong community might have more poly members than expected is something that you mentioned, which was obviously the founder effect, which is a concept in population genetics, kind of explaining why a certain population might have a much more narrow gene pool. And it's because a few people show up, they happen randomly to have those characteristics, and so those characteristics are expressed at a greater rate than they would be otherwise if they were representative of the larger population. So, in other words, maybe there are more poly people because more poly people randomly happened into being early adopters of rationality movements and Less Wrong, and they brought other poly people with them.
It could be a non-random effect, right? It could be that the founders were poly because that was the rational conclusion that they came to when they started this whole movement
That's
thing.
different than the founders effect, though. So let's get to that in a moment.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to sort of equate, just as long as we're well, I don't want to derail, but I want to see if this brings the point home. So I was thinking that there's also a higher rate in the rationalist community of like cryonics members as opposed to the general population. Is that explainable by any of the same factors that might say why there's more poly people in the rationalist community?
I think there might be a combination of factors, but I mean, so the one that you're mentioning is maybe it actually is a reasonable position to take, and people in the poly community or in the rationality community are willing to question their presuppositions, think about why they do what they do, and update. So maybe it actually makes sense for more people to be polyamorous than there are in the base population.
Right. And if more of the base population was willing to question their assumptions, then more of the base population would be poly as well.
Yeah. And something else, another thought is actually people who are well respected and high up, including Eliezer and Scott, are both polyamorous themselves and have written about it. So maybe they have an undue influence on people who read their stuff and think that they got a lot of good things to say, and people kind of follow suit. Actually, personally, my husband of 8 years, and we started out in a polyamorous relationship, although it's certainly gone through a lot of changes since we started out. I think that part of the reason he was willing to do that with me was because he'd been exposed to the idea through Overcoming Bias and Less Wrong, and he was kind of more comfortable with that idea and didn't think it was so totally crazy that I would want to do something like that.
So it seems to come from a lot of places.
Yeah.
The inclination towards polyamory. I wanted to say really quick, as a follow-up to our Chronics episode, very short side note, after our discussion with it, I felt more prepared to talk with people about it in my personal life, and I had a conversation about it with my grandmother and my mom. Mm-hmm. My mom agreed to sign up for Chronics.
Hey, nice.
These conversations can change people, and one thing that really slowed me down when I was procrastinating was that I didn't know anyone else, and that it would be just me and a bunch of strangers if it worked out right. Anyway, so I thought it was extremely gratifying to get a mind changed and possibly a life saved.
Yeah.
So that's pretty huge, and I just wanted to put that out there so people know that you can change people's minds with good arguments sometimes.
Congrats, dude.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh.
And that totally applies to this topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It does.
It applies to every topic.
Yeah, and regarding Scott actually did a great post. Scott Alexander did a great post on Slate Star Codex called "Polyamory is Boring," which we will link to in the show notes. And you can check that out. It is about how normal and very much like being monogamous polyamory actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the outside, this is actually, I think I mentioned this before on the air, where I had a friend call me out of the blue once, and he had just encountered his first poly person. And to be fair, for him, it's not the kind of thing, we mentioned that I'm from Fort Collins, and that you said the community is lively and active there, but it wasn't the kind of thing that I was ever exposed to there. Really, and that I guess he hadn't been either until he met somebody, and he had the same sort of like, have you heard of this? This is so weird, and so the Scott Alexander thing was from the inside it stops being weird really quickly, and he opens it up with a fun analogy about, oh, forget it, you guys read the essay, it's fun, it's not that long.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels normal, it feels really natural, and it feels a lot like any other kind of relationship and how you would run any other kind of romantic relationship.
So I'm going to talk briefly about why I like polyamory and dislike monogamy. I am one of those people, I don't know how much of, how many there are of us in the world, but who has just been poly by nature since as soon as I discovered girls, I guess. I never quite understood what this whole weird jealousy thing is about people having to have just one other person, and I couldn't figure out why people weren't just loving with everyone that they were in love with.
So you're saying you didn't or you still don't quite understand where that jealousy comes from?
I both. I
think it would take a failure of imagination to literally have no idea where people are coming from with
Do
jealousy.
you experience jealousy, Anish?
Not sexual jealousy. No.
I do, and we can talk more about that later.
Okay.
That sounds fun.
But, yeah, society beat me into shape, and I was like, oh, yes, now one true love, etc. And I was in a monogamous marriage for 6 years, and the whole marriage had problems, so we can't blame anything on just one thing. But, anyways, eventually I got out of that, and I was like, oh, thank God, I can join my people again.
Let's put this on the table. I think, if I remember correctly from your timeline history, that was back when you were a fundamentalist, right? A religious fundamentalist?
No. I dropped religion when I was like 13 or 14.
So when were you debating evolution and stuff on the forums? Was that pre-13 and 14 too?
That was, between the ages of 12 and 13.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Never mind.
I was precocious. and it wasn't really forums because the internet didn't exist yet in its current form. It was just local BBSs you could dial into.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But the thing that I dislike about monogamy, and we touched on it before, is the possession aspect. The treating the other person as if they are your property. And it's more the case that men do it to women, but women also do it to men.
We're both shaking our heads, bro.
Yeah,
You think it's equal?
I'm shaking my head.
Okay.
So I also don't think that it's something that has to be a part of a monogamous relationship.
No. Like Stephen's relationship, the de facto monogamy, I'm fine with, but the fact that lots of monogamy, the way it's practiced, certainly the compulsory monogamy of society today, is very much I own my partner's genitals.
But
and I own their affection, and no one else can have it. And I think that is complete bullshit.
When I was first dating and I was 17, I was very possessive, and I had this feeling like I was entitled to, this because we were in love, and I was entitled to, this amount of time because we were in love, and this amount of consideration because we were in love, and this type of behavior because we were in love, and that is, I think, more of a lack of mature understanding of what it means to enter into a relationship with someone than it is something that is specific to any kind of relationship structure.
I think so too, and I think that there is probably an even distribution between sexes as to the propensity for like the ownership quality, right?
Yeah.
Were you looking at her as she walked by?
That's true.
Says the TV girl, and
why, yes, she has female characteristics. Those are the same things that attracted me to you.
And it wasn't even a sexual thing. It was just like, where are you going? We should be together at all times. It wasn't a jealousy. You need to not spend time with other people or look at other people. It was, these are things that I absolutely must have in a relationship. And I feel like as I've gotten older, and poly actually really helps this, I've expanded what a relationship looks like to me, what it can look like. And it's become less of a matter of having expectations that people need to fulfill in order to have my love or get to relationship status or even the need to have such a status. But it's more of a dance where you're having all sorts of different interactions with people, and there's a lot more freedom in it, and it much more depends on what you both want to be doing. And the choice when to be together. And I
don't want anyone to be tied to me, because then that's not a relationship, in my opinion. That's someone that I have enslaved and captured somehow. I want someone to want to be with me. And if they don't want to be with me, then that's fine. Go on and be with someone else. But this forcing people to be with you is, I've always considered it just gross. And that is what poly frees you from. Like, you are allowed to be with other people, and if you want to stay with the person, you stay with them.
I would say that's what poly frees you from, and more what like just being mature and thoughtful frees you from.
Poly doesn't necessarily free you from that. Okay. There are a lot of relationship expectations that I held long into being in a polyamorous relationship, like, if I don't get to see you 2 times a week at least, I'm going to cry because this isn't fulfilling my expectations.
Oh, well, I mean, if it's not fulfilling what you need in a relationship, then you probably need to drop the relationship.
Needs
and
and expectations are different, right?
Yeah.
So, or desires and expectations are different, and the line between them can be a little fuzzy, but I feel very happy that my desires are becoming more free. And I think that poly kind of lets you do that because you can have different kinds of relationships and still fulfill some of your needs with different people. So,
and that's what I think is nice about de facto monogamy. It's that you aren't tied to each other, but you just don't want to have anyone else in your relationship, and that's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of, so I'm trying to think of, and not to put my relationship on a pedestal, but I'm contrasting my relationship with like archetypal relationships I have that you're describing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it doesn't bother my partner if I go out with a girl all night, or if a girl stays at our place and we hang out till 4 a.m. It doesn't bother me if she's out with a guy until the wee hours of the morning, like that. But it's very easy for me to imagine relationships where, like, I can't believe you're out with this guy till past midnight. What are you doing? Like that whole weird possessiveness thing.
That's a trust issue too.
It is. Yeah. But I think, so that might be a lot of what that possessiveness comes from, right? Is the whole trust issue.
Well, no, I think the trust is a really good part of that, because when you have enforced monogamy, to me, I don't feel like you can ever really trust your other partner to be staying with you because they want to be with you. And to me, I don't want anyone to be with me if they don't want to be. But once your partner has gone out and slept with someone else, and they come back to you anyway, they're like, yeah, I mean, that was fun. I enjoyed that person, but I live with you. You are the person that I come back to. Then you no longer have just like faith that they love you. You now have knowledge that they love you, you know?
He's talking from a hierarchical perspective.
Oh, fine.
No, I was going to bring that up, but then I noticed that is not how you would describe it. But I would say that I think you were linked to the essay on your blog that I read something about that you wrote maybe last year.
Oh, okay.
It was a short post somewhere that I think you might have shared to Facebook or something.
Okay.
But you wrote something on that if we can dig it up. You might have a better memory than I do of which one it was.
I didn't remember that I posted that, but yeah, it's very much to me. Once your partner is free to leave but doesn't leave, then I feel much better about being in the relationship. I no longer feel like I am imposing my will on someone.
If they're not there by unbreakable vow, but there by choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, I know that they're free to pursue sex somewhere else if they want to. And, they will if they want to, but they're coming back to me.
For listeners, unbreakable vow isn't a rationalist term. It's from Harry Potter.
So the part that I was saying was coming from a hierarchical perspective is they live with me, they come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
They might go out and do other stuff with these satellite lovers, whatever. They come back to me, and that would be the difference.
Okay, see, the way that you no one can see this, but you made this hand motion like floofy, oh, those satellite people don't matter. But that's not the case at all, because everyone that we've ever had sex with is someone who's been a friend of ours. Either a couple friend or someone that we know personally. I mean, we don't just have random sex with strangers.
No,
of
course not.
Yeah, so these are people that are important to us.
When I was a swinger, I was in a relationship with the same couple for the better part of a year.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were our friends, and we would go out to movies and dinner and go to we were all very interested in animals and go see reptiles and cool stuff like that. And it was not a strictly sexual relationship, but that is what we did. And but there were also rules. They were the couple.
Okay.
I was the third person. There was I couldn't just go hang out with one of them. It always had to be them together.
Oh, that sucks.
There were a lot of different things.
That sounds like they didn't have trust then.
Oh, they definitely didn't have trust.
So, out of curiosity,
I take back that high five. That sounds like a terrible relationship.
Oh, well, that's why I ended up leaving that situation, is because their relationship was rocky enough and difficult enough for me to tiptoe around. That it became very uncomfortable, and while I still claim them as friends, and this was like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
I
was no longer interested in having that kind of relationship with them.
Did we talk about the word primary yet, or did we just use significant other? Or I think we did earlier.
Yes.
Primary, yeah.
If we expanded on what that meant, I can't remember. But it
means exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the couple. So I don't have a situation where I'm involved in the couple and then there are other people who I'm also in relationships with. I am in multiple couples.
I wanted to say really quick that relationship that you described from years ago sounded a lot like you were in a relationship with an unstable person who happens to be two people. Right? Does that sort of encapsulate it?
It was unstable.
But would you count that as a poly relationship for them?
No, it was definitely not a poly situation. It was you could call it a friends with benefits situation, or a swinging quote unquote situation, or something like that for them.
But even though there was like friendship and hanging out, it still wasn't poly. I'm just curious to see where some people.
No, there is.
I don't know exactly where.
Blur. There is some blur.
Okay.
That is fair. I would never call that poly because there was no opportunity for a really close romantic relationship for me. They were the romantic couple. I was the friend that they could have sex with. So yeah, I guess I've outed myself as having experimented with swinging for a little over a year, a while back. And the reason that I chose polyamory is because it turned out that was a really unsatisfying way to spend my time. And that what I really wanted was really close emotional connections with people. And I wanted to be able to form those really organically.
So the interesting thing that a lot of people would say, I think, I really want to form a close, intimate relationship with somebody, and I want to form that relationship organically. But you used plural. And I think that just different zone to start from is where that difference draws, right? So this is why I think people don't love, I guess in the rationalist community, there isn't a huge desire to work from a definition and then talk about stuff from there, because definitions suck, right? It's hard to define anything in a satisfactory way.
Yeah, I know that starting from a definition is difficult, and that we've kind of expanded on and modified that definition as we have continued to talk. But I think it is helpful to have something to start with. And that particular thing that we started with, I actually pulled off of the website More Than Two, which is it's run by Franklin Vo, and there's a book of the same name by Franklin Vo and Eve Reichert called More Than Two that I absolutely recommend, especially if you're somebody who agrees with my particular form of poly, which I arrived at through a lot of mistakes and pain and, trial and error. And then this book came out and I was like, why wasn't it there before?
Exactly. Why couldn't I have read this 5 years ago?
Wow, other people came to the same conclusions I came to. This is fantastic and so helpful. And actually, reading their book is what caused me to finally give up rules. Not because it's bad to have boundaries, to talk about what you want in a relationship and what's important to you, and have other people respect that, but because there's a bunch of unintended consequences that come along with rule making. And one of those is that people hold the rules as more important than even what they care about the rule actually being about. And I have made this mistake where I'm like, you broke a rule. That was our agreement, and I have zero tolerance for rule breaking around here. I can't even trust you anymore. Whereas, having an evolving conversation about it is a whole different situation. And then the other thing is that when you make rules as a couple, those are things that anybody else who's dating your partner or dating you, they didn't have a say in that. They are taking those orders from on high. And while they might agree, or while many people do agree to enter into a situation where rules are set down from on high about their relationship with someone by a third party and that other person, things change. And when love is concerned, things are often unpredictable. And that's one of the ways that I guess I found out that it's really important for me to have the potential to be in a changing, morphing relationship, because
if you're with that couple that you're just friends with and then you fall in love and they're not okay with that hurts.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I've had my heart broken a lot.
Yeah.
And when it is a third party who is not in the relationship that you are in, who is making the calls for your relationship, that fucking sucks.
It does.
So,
I think unless you're agreeing to it informed in advance, right?
And
but
again,
even then it might still suck.
Right.
So
and then
I guess I'm trying to think of some rules that are obviously stupid. Maybe not obviously stupid, but
there are things like you can engage in this kind of sexual activity, but you can't kiss.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Is that really a rule some people have?
Oh god, that's such a swinger rule right there.
That you can't kiss?
Yeah.
I've never heard that, and I've hung around a lot of swingers.
Julia Roberts rule.
Yeah, that's the Julia Roberts. Woman. Yeah, I mean that's the same thing as blumpies. They don't actually exist.
Oh,
I never heard of blumpies.
It actually exists.
Blumpies don't exist. Don't worry about it.
I don't know about blumpies, but the Julia Roberts rule
does exist.
There's
no way. That's always one of the first things you do. You with someone.
So first of all, that was going to be the fake rule that I was going to invent as an example of a bad rule.
I had a couple solicit me, and they had a ton of rules.
Oh no.
And one of them was, you do not kiss my male partner on the lips. Because you know what? This is about me and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be have fun
assholes.
Finding somebody who's interested in getting into a relationship with y'all because...
At that point, they just need to hire a professional.
This is an example of...
they do not want a person to have sex with. They want a professional to help them for an evening.
This is an example of... this demonstrates the fact that you can meet straw people in real life.
Straw men.
So, all right. So, hold on. I wanted to just throw this past you guys, since you guys are the experts here. It seems to me I think we can all agree that a stupid rule is saying no kissing on the mouth, because that does seem to have the kind of, even for me from the outside looking in, as I'm hoping some of our audience isn't already in this and they can sympathize with my ignorance a little bit.
Can I tell you why people do that?
Trust issues and stupid boundaries.
It's trust issues, but also there is as people are opening up and as people are letting go of possession, there is a pretty serious desire to feel special. And people will come up with artificial ways that they can feel special. Like, he only does that sex act with me.
Feel special because your partner loves you.
I think so. But things like, no, he only watches Game of Thrones with me. Or, no, this is our special thing. We go to the theater. Or, it can be all sorts of things.
This might be a straw man example or not. You guys let me know. What if the rule was you only say I love you to me? You can have really close friends that you fuck and hang out with and hold hands and snuggle and watch the movies with, but I'm the person that you say you love you to. But then that draws the problem of, like, what if you fall in love with them? Then you have to be dishonest.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's an incredibly common rule that people in non-monogamous relationships make. You may only love me. I must be the most important person in your life. Period. I
don't believe we have that rule, but I have my own issues with the L word that are unrelated. We can get into that some other day, maybe.
Unless if it's not that long, it ties into polyamory.
Well, people use love in a lot of different ways, and when you're communicating it, it often helps to say, I love you, and by that, I mean you've been an amazing friend to me, Stephen, and I'm so happy that you're in my life.
Sure.
I love the time that we spend together.
So the reason I fear the L word is because of the whole way I was raised, again, to, with the monogamy. To me, when you say I love you to someone, that means, and I want you to be mine and be with me forever, and I will take care of you forever, and here's a ring, and I can feel
what
feelings...
If you say I love you to your brother or your mom, right?
Well, I mean, you can say it to family, and it doesn't count. But if you say to someone of the opposite sex, especially if you're having sex with them, and then all of a sudden, all of that baggage is on you, and I know not everyone is like that, but I fear saying that to someone because they're going to think, oh my God, he loves me, we're a couple, we're together forever. And I'm like, wait, no, what? I have strong feelings of love towards you.
So
I do not want you to pack your stuff and move in with me today.
This brings up, as far as we're talking about the complication of
that particular rule. The word.
I've totally asked different people to move in with me. So far, it hasn't
worked out.
No, it hasn't happened.
Oh, it hasn't happened.
Except for Tim, who I did end up marrying.
Oh, so I wanted to bring that up as an additional rule that kind of made sense, but it's not necessarily like a romantic relationship thing. But first, I wanted to say, as far as the I love you thing, I exchanged an I love you with a friend of mine that we've been friends for many years, and he's gay and I'm not, but we both knew what it meant.
Yeah.
And so it was more of the the platonic kind of thing, right?
It's a communication.
Yeah. So
it's a communication thing. That's all.
But so like a rule that kind of makes sense. So say you're in a relationship where you're splitting the bills for your say your home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
like an
implicit rule might be that you live there and you pay the bills. But say you fall in love with somebody and you move in with them, but like that it needs to be established somewhere in advance that you can't just up and leave those financial obligations, because then you're leaving, say, your hypothetical partner. We can use Tim in this example. Do you guys split your bills?
We do somewhat.
So like, but
we try.
Let's say the mortgage is 50-50, right? And then like
we definitely pay half and half rent.
And then say like, well, I'm going to go live with this guy. Well, and you can try and find a roommate. Good luck. But like that seems like be a rule that seems distinct from.
Well, generally in a healthy relationship, one person isn't just going to up and leave.
Even if you have a roommate, they just don't up and leave. If you're in a friendship, they just don't up and leave you in a lurch. Tim and I both spend a significant amount of time away from home. But we share with other partners, sleeping over or, doing stuff for multiple days, going on trips, whatever. But we also share responsibilities for our pets, who we love, and paying the bills and basic stuff like that.
So my position, I think, would have been more coherent had I laid out my 3 hypothetical rules in order, which was the obviously stupid one of no kissing on the mouth with your superfluous partners, and that's what I picture with someone who would make that kind of stupid rule, right? That's how they would model their satellite partners.
Gotcha.
Right? And then the second rule that seemed less stupid but still probably common was no I love yous to other people. And then the third rule, which I was trying to think of one that was like really made a lot of sense, was no leaving.
I want to jump in with a rule that makes a lot of sense, and this isn't the specific rule I have in mind, but because Katrina was very much against the rules and the third party imposing things on you, and yes, I agree with you, that sucks. Sometimes things suck. But on the other hand, if you're in a relationship with someone else, or even 2 or 3 other people, you don't want to hurt them.
No, you
and
don't.
Sometimes things will hurt other people, and if you were to do the thing that hurts them anyway, that is just mean. It's inconsiderate, and it makes you have to reevaluate the relationship if you're willing to do things that hurt them, even though they hurt them.
I want to be very clear. I'm specifically talking about rule making. I'm not talking about. So, for example,
but that can look like a rule. Like if a couple has
some important distinctions.
If a couple has, you mentioned Game of Thrones. Let's say they're on season 6 now. A couple has watched Game of Thrones for 5 years. They've bonded over it. It's like a family ritual nowadays. If that person were to go and on a Sunday evening, let's say they always watch it together on Tuesday because they're busy on Sundays and Mondays. On a Sunday evening, that person were to go to one of their lovers' friends' houses and watch Game of Thrones with them. And the next day, the other person found out, they could be really hurt. And to the third party, that looks like a stupid rule. That's like, oh, he can't watch Game of Thrones with me? What kind of stupid rule is that? But to them, that's something that hurt them. So things that sometimes look like rules aren't rules, they're consideration for your partner.
Yeah, so with us having special things, what I would strongly encourage for anybody who's in a relationship is to think about simply being together, making that relationship brew. I don't know how to describe it with this other person who is a unique human being, and you have something special with them is way more important than getting hurt about who they watch a television show with.
I mean, yes, but emotions are funny that way.
Emotions are funny, and if that's something that somebody is going to be iffy about, they should talk about it. Mm-hmm. They should talk about their feelings and address why. Try to think about, and people should be considerate. I'm not saying people should just go off watching Game of Thrones willy-nilly, but people should be considerate of their partner's feelings, of course, but I would also encourage them to figure out what it is about that they're really feeling pain over, and trying to address it at its base.
It could just be that you did something with someone else. That is always our thing.
I can chime in from a mono perspective here.
Mm-hmm.
That I can't remember if this was Game of Thrones. It may well have been. I don't think it was because we're never that invested in that show. But
did you watch it with someone else?
Well, so here's the thing: is first of all, I do see where you're coming from, in that either you have to set up that as an explicit thing, which then sounds like a straight up rule,
mm-hmm.
and then explaining it to the third party might sound stupid.
It's even very painful to the other person.
Yeah.
But you also have a certain amount of understanding, expecting that, okay, even if you just have multiple friends and you have one friend you watch Game of Thrones with all the time, and then you maybe go off and watch it with somebody else because it happens to be, your friend might feel a little miffed. And it's not a romantic relationship thing. It's well, I was expecting to watch it with you because that's our thing that we do together. We make brownies and we watch Game of Thrones, and I'm just a little bit hurt.
I can think of a good platonic example that fits the bill perfectly here, and this will help illustrate, I think, kind of where those expectations come from, and how it doesn't necessarily come from possessiveness or rule making. But my brother and I used to watch The Walking Dead together when I still lived in Fort Collins. We watched it, I think, the night it came out on TV together, and that was our thing. And I can't remember if this ever happened, but it probably did. But hypothetically, I missed that Sunday and we were going to watch it that Monday. Well, he watches it anyway by himself. And then it's dude, fuck you, we're going to watch this together. So there's still that bit of thing. And so I feel like the one takeaway here might be that hurt feelings are going to happen in any relationship, whether it's a poly relationship, a platonic friend relationship, or a monogamous relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so part of it will just be having healthy ways to deal with it and
Or,
how you want to move forward with it,
talk
right?
with each other. Like, for example, when Tim starts a video game and I'm watching him when he starts, we will actually talk about, is this a video game that I want to be there for every time he plays it, and watch through the whole progression, and yes, I do that. Or is it a game that I'm totally comfortable with popping in every once in a while, and he's played it by himself, or he's played it with another friend or another partner while I've been gone. And if it's something that I want to be there for, then he respects that. Or, he'll be like, I don't think I can handle it if I can only play this around you, because I'm so into this game. And
But you can see how, like, a young Katrina would, that's dating him and wants to play that game might be like, what's with this stupid rule that you can't play this game with me?
well, I was an idiot.
Okay.
Well, so like,
No, I mean,
let's use that real example though. Say like you're watching him play Fallout 4, and you're out all week or something, and he's got a girlfriend over. Hey, you playing Fallout 4? I see the disc there. Let's pop it in and play. Oh, sorry, I play this with Katrina. Well, that's stupid. How come? Right? That could theoretically happen, right?
Yeah, I don't know. When other people watch shows or play games together, and it's like the thing that they do, I'm usually cool with it. The other thing that happens is we just watch it twice, and that's totally cool. And
Is it really though?
Yeah,
I don't
part of the
enjoy
fun-
watching things twice, but I happen to be in romantic relationships with several people who are totally cool with watching things twice. So Fernando has seen Game of Thrones, each episode multiple times, partially because he also is dating somebody else who really enjoys Game of Thrones. And I totally respect that. And, knowing that he has that outlet to watch Game of Thrones with someone else, maybe I can, if I have time, I can sneak in an episode on my own, because it won't be putting him out. But yeah, it was our thing, and then it is more of a group thing. And I feel like being a little open to change on special things is actually really important in any friendship.
The line in my head I had this line just pop into my head. This conversation's got a bit metaphorical, and it made me think of.
But the thing is,
it's not metaphorical.
Not. Yeah.
It's literally what.
Right, but it also like applies to larger things, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it kind of made me think of
Like everything in polyamory, it actually applies to every relationship and friendship that you've ever had.
And since I'm a nerd and this is rationally adjacent, it makes me think of in Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, when Hermione learns that Harry and Draco had been doing science together all year too.
Yes.
And she's like, "Were you doing science with him?"
And I totally, I felt for both of them.
I know.
I felt for Hermione, oh my god, he was cheating on her with science. But on Harry's point of view, he's like, I was just doing science with my other friend. Yeah, no. It was a brilliant chapter, because you felt... Well, I anyway felt so much for both of them.
Well, but then again,
see their
too,
point.
we can look at the symbolism. Look at where that got Hermione that position, right? I'm
Oh,
kidding.
dude.
Have we gotten
Too soon.
No. Have we gotten through all the rules that you had?
Yeah, it was just I was trying to think of 3 hypotheticals. Are you asking me about like real rules that I actually have, or rules that I made up on the spot?
Rules that you made up on the spot.
No, those were the only 3.
Okay.
I liked the one that you thought of, though I think that was a better illustration of what I was trying to think of with the I love you thing only for one person, right? Where you have the one special thing that we do together.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's something, as ridiculously not tying as saying you can only love me, or something that sounds more reasonable a bit, maybe to the couple, but not necessarily to a third party,
Well,
that says
I have to
we
say-
watch.
I am
we watch
so
Walking
averse
Dead.
to the love word that I was in love with Melissa for a good 4 months before I allowed myself to say it to her. And when it did come out, it came out on accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck, I can't take that back. And I was like,
I've
yeah,
totally
okay,
been there.
I love you, and yeah.
I totally been there when I didn't really love the person yet, because before you love the person, you love them sometimes.
Like right
Yes.
after sex.
Well,
I'm thinking of a TV show called Better Off Ted, where he drops it on the first date. It was a very funny show. Check it out.
Well, or, they say something awesome and really intelligent, and you're like, I love you. And then you're like, oh, can we explain what that means to me right now?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important follow-up. And then, there's pressure to say it back, and there's all sorts of other things going on there. But yeah, communication. That's an important thing to have.
That sounds like something that has to exist in a successful poly relationship.
In a successful relationship.
I was going to say, but it's not something that exists in every mono relationship.
No, it's not something that exists in every poly
what did you call it?
either.
What is it that you said that exists in? What was the word that you used for the like non-optional monogamy?
Compulsory monogamy.
Yeah. That those couples, I'm imagining several right off the bat, they don't communicate. They're like bad friends, right? So
alternatively, what if there's a situation where there's compulsory polyamory? That would be just as bad as a compulsory monogamy situation.
It would, yes.
Yeah.
But we don't have that society. But yes, it would be.
I can't, like, there are just people that wouldn't work for, right? And so that's the whole point, yeah. And I don't know if the poly, I'm sure they're, again, I'm picturing the fringe of every group. There's probably somebody out there saying that that's what everybody should be doing, and you guys are, anyone who's in a monogamous relationship has just drank the Kool-Aid, and they're,
you can always find someone to say the most extreme fringe stuff.
But I don't think that anyone takes that position seriously. That's not my impression.
So did we want to get into, because I personally consider polyamory so obviously
an okay thing to do.
Yes, that I find that I need to try to steelman critiques of polyamory, because I just cannot understand why anyone would have anything against polyamory ever, or just the option of polyamory, right? I mean, de facto monogamy is fine, but do we want to go into the steelmanning of polyamory, anti-polyamory arguments, or do we have other things first?
I do really want to go into it. I'm just wondering if I should be my normal defensive self and explain kind of what polyamory is not.
Sure.
If you want to do double time too, when we're like saying putting forward these critiques, you can do it as your normal, like, this is what I actually believe, and then you can try and endorse it too. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor for anybody to try and think of the best arguments for a position you don't like, right? Or whatever. So that's.
But yeah, actually, I bet a lot of this is going to come up during steel manning. So let's see what you got.
Well, steel manning was hard for me because, again, it's so difficult for me to imagine why this wouldn't work. I'm going to start with what I don't think is a steel man, but a lot of critiques that I did find when I was looking for critiques weren't actually attacks on polyamory at all. They were always attacks on polygamy, where they conflated polyamory with polygamy.
Yes. Actually, I was thinking about that too. I may have mentioned to you that I unfriended somebody on Facebook because they were saying that if polyamory is widely acceptable, then only a few men will have all the females.
Yes.
And then there will be angry single men who can't get any females because of imbalance, and they're going to go blow up things. And
wow, that went from stupid to really stupid pretty quickly.
I don't think that's stupid. I think that is one of the reasons polygamous societies are so evil.
I meant jumping straight to blowing stuff up because you're frustrated for lack of sex partners, right?
No, I mean that's fairly common.
They're referring to...
they are referring to jihad, and
yes.
But a lot of early societies that were very violent, that was one of the ways they would encourage violence and get men to go off to war. The men who were very successful and had a lot of riches had a whole harem. The people at the bottom had nothing left, but they could go off to war and get riches or get killed. Either way, the male population is reduced. Polygamous societies are evil for particularly that reason, because they are made to exploit sexual frustration in order to create a violent, warlike society.
I'd say that the problem is specifically because
because women are treated as property.
Women.
Yes, yeah. And because women are always used as the incentive. I've read a lot of blogs where they're like, How are you supposed to get the correct social incentives if there's not an equitable distribution of pussy? That was literally the sentence.
Whoa.
Which is burned in my head. An equitable distribution of pussy. And I'm like, dude, pussy is not a resource you dole out. These are people. And that's polygamy always treats women as objects that are given to men as rewards for doing whatever society wants them to do.
Can I weigh in really quick?
Yes, please.
And you mentioned jihadism, and I'm probably more vehemently against Islam in general than both of you.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe
that's a different episode.
You probably are.
But Islam and jihadism, it's a
different episode.
Don't conflate them.
Well, I'm not conflating them, but there's not another tradition that inspires jihad in the same way that we call it jihad.
Okay, I don't want to get into this conversation
that all aside,
now.
I was sort of flabbergasted because then you went on to say that polyamory or polygamy.
Mm-hmm.
That's those words are too close to be.
They are. It's unfortunate.
that they're necessarily evil and it's about controlling women, it's not impossible for me to imagine a society where that's just that's the comfortable norm for people, right? That maybe it doesn't exist, but like I wouldn't even go so far as to say that that's necessarily an evil thing.
No, the point of polygamy is that the men do not share their women. That there's a bunch of women to one man, but it's not a society where anyone can have sex with anyone how they feel. The men have a harem that belongs to them.
Yeah, and actually that's a really important distinction that's often brought up in academic discussions of polyamory, is that the difference between polyamory and polygamy is that in polyamory, anybody can date multiple partners. And people bring up things like one penis policy and, different agreements that people have. But polyamory is definitely an equitable system in which you really can date multiple people, like both men and women can.
Gotcha. And I guess, so I'm imagining hypothetical groups of people that could possibly exist but probably don't. So maybe that's what I'm getting hung up on, and
okay.
we're dealing with people that are actually out there and existing.
Right. So the claim that that my former Facebook friend made, which you're echoing, is this: because we live in a paternalistic society, that is naturally how things will fall into place.
I'm not echoing that.
You're suggesting that it's something that could exist somewhere. Now, my friend was saying not only could this exist somewhere, it does exist here. If people are given more freedom to choose multiple mates, if that's what they want to do,
then that is the equilibrium that it'll tend towards.
Man, is that not the case?
No, that is, whenever you hear someone say that, you're like, wow, you have never met an actual poly community in your life, have you? Because they tend to be actually much more women-centric than men-centric.
Right, yeah, and that was the observation I was going to bring to counter that, what your guy, I'm assuming you said it was a guy, right?
It happened to be a guy.
Yeah. I guess I assumed it was a guy because that sounds like something an idiot guy would say from
that
perspective.
Could it be a woman? Actually, I guess it could if she wasn't in the community.
Could be.
Yeah, anyone who doesn't know anything about poly.
This person who was in the Peace Corps and is a completely admirable human being put that forward and decided to stick to his guns.
This is the hill he would die on.
This is the hill he would die on, and I just got annoyed to the point that because he wouldn't listen to me, and I feel like I have some pull on that particular topic, and
like the facts.
And
let's just throw it out there.
Yeah, so I got frustrated to the point that I was like, I don't need to hear your shit.
And I should caveat, I didn't mean that this person's an idiot. I meant that this person had an idiotic position. That's an important distinction to make.
It is an important distinction.
And to clarify, so for the people who are not familiar with the community, they tend to be very much more women-centric because women can leave in a free society. And if they don't feel comfortable somewhere, they will. And for that reason, generally, people make a lot of effort to make sure the women feel comfortable there.
Can you expand on that?
I mean that there isn't generally creepers in poly communities, and if there are, they get drummed out pretty quickly.
There are, but people are less afraid to. One, it's a small community. People tend to know each other. Yeah. Like Aniosh for a while was actually connected to me through polyamory.
Yes.
Not currently, but distantly. We tend to kind of know each other or know of each other. Mm-hmm. And if somebody is rapey or abusive, then that kind of goes through the grapevine.
That's a lot. Those are much stronger attributes than creeper. I guess maybe I'm not sure what creeper is. Creeper I have a bad association with because one person can call you creepy, and if all you're doing is, for whatever reason, staring at the wrong place for too long and you're just zoning out, then all of a sudden you're branded as a creeper. I don't
think that actually happens.
So I'm not sure. I guess what is creeper? I guess is that the nice way to put rapey slash
assaulty / abusive.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds way stronger.
I have received warnings from people about somebody I'm dating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was with a guy and
did you tell them no, he's actually a nice guy?
I told him that maybe they misunderstood, and then later I was like, he's just too rapey. I can't be with him anymore. Yeah. And I did talk to other people about it because it's not okay.
No, that's a pretty intense relationship issue, to put it super politely.
Multiple, and it turned out that there were people who I knew, who actually had serious concerns about this person, who, out of politeness and, probably just not enough evidence, had not talked to me about it until after we had broken up. At which point I was like, this is why I received these reports, and which was really upsetting, and I suspected. But yeah, when I had a particularly bad breakup, one of my worries was that I would have difficulty dating.
Yeah. Well,
and not even not date me, but not even give me a chance at friendship or...
And that's what I was worried about with that relationship tarnishing in a small community, right?
Yeah. Well, so, that is also one of the nice parts of having more than one partner, that you do have other people as a social safety net to fall back onto if something like that happens.
And to vouch for you.
And to vouch for you too, yeah. But you're not alone. You have these people you're still in a relationship with that can give you that emotional support.
I think you have a responsibility to have a lot of evidence, and before you go to anyone. In fact, there's a metamor of mine who is dating somebody, and people
Hold on,
who...
a term dropped there without explaining.
Oh,
metamor.
I'm sorry. Let me go back. A metamor is a term for a partner's other partner.
So, for example, if I was dating someone who was dating Katrina, then Katrina would be a metamor of mine, even if we're not dating.
That's right. Yeah. So, I guess one thing about polyamory is having good metamor relationships.
Yeah.
And this particular metamor of mine, I definitely consider her a friend. So when this other person said, oh yeah, I dated that person and rapist, my ear...
And this person is describing someone that you were currently dating?
No. Let's just say I heard through a third person, not directly, so I couldn't follow up in questioning. I had somebody come up to me and say, I'm concerned about this other person, that because the person that they're dating has been called a rapist by somebody they used to date.
Gotcha.
So what I said to this person who told me about it is, that's a pretty heavy accusation. You need to get more details. That's concerning.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to judge somebody without having any context for this. But how do you feel about going back and getting more details, or me talking directly to the person who made that accusation, so we can figure out if we need to go to my good friend, my metamor, about this other person that she's dating.
I think that was an extremely responsible stance to take. People, I think, are inclined to overreact. So that's the thing is it's hard to say overreact, but they're inclined to react too intensely to charges like that, right?
Well,
some people would call their friend and be like...
It depends on how mature your community is.
Right, or I guess how much you trust the person that you got this word from, or whatever. Like, there's all kinds of factors that can jump in.
But that's similar. That's telephoning going on here,
right?
And there's no way I'm going to act on a situation like that.
Yeah.
Right. No, I just wanted to comment that I've seen.
And I think that is possibly one of the things that makes rationalism more amenable to these to poly communities, because I could see people who haven't been trained in this sort of thing to freak out and start spreading all sorts of rumors, and the fact that you require a higher standard of evidence, and you often build priors on other people and how much they can be trusted, and how much a certain given piece of evidence alters your opinion, makes that a little bit safer.
I think so. And I guess it's like if someone came up to me and said, hey, I heard on the grapevine that your friend murdered somebody.
Right.
We're like, okay, can we back this up before I call the police?
Yeah, I have a partner who warned me that I might see accusations about him murdering someone.
Really?
And just kind of explaining the situation, and just to warn you, this is something that you might see.
Huh.
So don't freak out. It's a misunderstanding.
He just fell on my knife.
No.
Shit happens.
But...
Okay, so... I think we got wildly off track.
I do want to say that drama definitely can crop up in insular communities like polyamorous communities. And it's not, again, something that is specifically a poly thing, but when there are only so many people who are willing to date an experienced at dating multiple people successfully and healthily, then you end up dating some of the same people sometimes.
And I mean, you're going to get drama like that, I think, in any community whatsoever. Yeah. And you might bump into more of it just because you know more people, second and third and fourth hand through a larger dating community, or through a larger, so my dating, I guess, what am I trying to say? Not dating community. My partner and all of her friends are like people that I know through my relationship, right? Mm-hmm. But your partner, and all of their friends are, so like that net gets way bigger, right? So there'll be more drama.
It is a good way to make friends.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But the more friends you have, the more drama there might be. I guess that's what I was trying to get at, right?
I guess.
So
I guess let me give you another example of unfortunate polydrama.
Okay.
So
you're making all the listeners be like, God, I never want to be poly.
I'm
so much fucking drama. Okay, all right, go ahead.
From my own experience.
Polydrama. That's a fun word. It's like regular drama, but pointier.
So I mentioned that one of my exes and I didn't part on great terms, and her metamor was really, really involved in that situation.
Okay.
So, and one of my current partners, this is years later, one of my current partners was like, I've been talking to this person and she is so cool and she does this and that. And I'm like, is this her name? Yeah. And I'm like, she is really cool, but does she know that you're dating me? Because
she'll have a problem with that.
She might have a problem because of this past thing that happened. And if this is something that you want to pursue, I would love to go out to coffee with her, talk things through, and try to, get to a better place. But I just want to warn you, we parted on poor terms to the point that, or I parted with my ex-girlfriend who, if this person knows that you are dating me, she might not be willing to enter or even explore entering a relationship with you. So it ended up not working, not going forward between them. My partner decided it was too much trouble to even go forward with that when he could, pursue other things. So
I don't think we actually managed to steel man anything.
No, you mentioned that people are just polydrama. It's so horrible. It's all.
Well, okay, I guess there is that.
I would say that's probably the primary reason that I'm not in a poly relationship.
Yeah.
Because that sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I've managed to avoid most of the drama, but on the other hand, I'm also not in very many relationships.
And your relationship and dynamic is different, right? You're not trying to maintain.
I guess.
So if one of your potential girlfriends had some drama that was going on, you'd be like, well, all right, forget it.
Yeah.
But
no, I wouldn't break it off with my girlfriend, but I'd be like, that sounds sucky for your drama. And, I'd listen and commiserate, but I wouldn't get involved.
I think that when you have an insular community, people learn how important it is to avoid massive trauma because there's a fear that it'll come back to bite you in the ass. You can't just burn all your bridges and be like, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Right.
Fuck you and fuck you also. So I think that that's actually really a positive thing, is that people have to learn, you're forced to learn to communicate. You're forced to learn to do
on the
conflict
hand,
resolution.
I have seen much, much worse drama in my monogamous friends relationships than I ever have in a poly relationship.
Well, I've been in mostly poly relationships, so actually I shouldn't comment on that. My monogamous marriage had immense amounts of drama. So, I guess drama is just the thing that happens with relationships.
Not necessarily.
It really depends on who you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
So of my relationships, I'm in a 8+ year long relationship is one of them, and then I'm in 2 other relationships that have lasted about 2 years apiece at this point. And then I'm also in a new one that's only been a couple months. But the relationships that I have that are the longest lasting, the 8 years, 2 years, 2 years, they are so easy and so low drama.
That's why they last so long.
Yeah.
And I am so comfortable with those people, and I gotta, brag, we're just great at resolving issues and talking through things, which we don't even have to do that often.
As far as relationships having drama, you mentioned it sort of like as a prerequisite. You said relationships have drama. To tag on yours and pat myself on the back for having a great relationship, I don't think we've had one piece of drama in our relationship. I've been with my partner for 5 years, 4 or 5, and that stemmed from the relationship. We just happened to get along great on like everything. It's like spooky.
Don't try to have a wedding.
Right. Well, yeah, that I can't actually see that being a dramatic thing.
That was super easy for me.
Oh, you're so lucky.
And
you would think yours would be more complicated.
My drama well, my drama was all with my parents. And that's the other steelman position that I want to get to.
Oh, okay.
Is being polyamorous in the world.
Okay, that seems like a good stopping point for now. This episode got a lot longer than we'd anticipated, so we're breaking it in half. Part 2 will be released in 1 week from today, and then we'll resume our normal schedule of 2 weeks between episodes. So join us again for Poly Part 2 in 1 week, and if you have a moment, consider leaving a review or rating at iTunes. Thanks!